development for a township.
I would just add that it's the State Department of Community and Economic Development
Okay.
that's the source of this one.
Okay, that's what I was, thanks, Don.
Mr. Siegel?
Your report addresses Ardmore and Westchester. Westchester is a significantly different community from ours. It has a central district. Ardmore has a central corridor. Did you look at communities like Haverford that have sort of what I'll call disparate business districts? We have Oakmont, we have Brookline, we have a bit of Lancaster Avenue. I don't see any of that in your information.
Lower Merion itself has 11 different business districts. It's actually, in my research, it was actually very similar to Haverford Township. It had Ballackinwood, it has Bryn Mawr, it has decentralized business districts similar to Haverford Township. And I thought that was the biggest relation to Haverford Township that
Did you
I
look
could
at the
find.
City Line Business District and the joint partnership with the city?
The City Line Business District. I did not, but I have not looked there.
I think to answer some of your question, Mr. Siegel, is that the Main Street and Elm Street funding, they have two separate purposes. Main Street, as it connotates, would indicate that, like Lancaster Avenue is a very big thoroughfare. It's a Main Street program. Media, for example, has a very identifiable Main Street area. Elm Street could be more typified for our kind of small business districts, where we have 9 separate business districts. We would probably qualify and be more qualified under the Elm Street model of that funding source. So we're definitely in the approach where we can receive some money. We do have a challenge with the districts that we have, and I think that we're trying to address that, with the state government as it is, and I've been to meetings with Mr. Oliva and some others to figure out how we can attract more funding towards us. But through these programs, I'm confident we would definitely be able to attract the same type of funding that Lower Merion did and make it relevant in Haverford Township.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Commissioner D'Amelio.
When you talk about economic development funds, all right, when you look at my ward, which is very close to the second ward, it parallels, and we're close to the ninth ward as well. There's a lot of neighborhood area there. It's a bedroom community with the Manoa Shopping Center being right across the street from Westgate Hills. Then going further east on the pike, you have homes and businesses intermixed. How would that help the first ward? It's much different. I agree with Siegel. I think there's a lot of, we're not talking about apples and apples in some of these areas. I mean, you look at Westchester, it's totally different than Haverford Township, even Lower Merion. So how would that help that area? Did you look at that area? Did you look at from the Blue Route all the way up to Township Line?
Well, we took the time to take Mr. Day with the limited time that we had him around. I personally drove him around the township, walked him around the township, took him to every business district, tried to get him as identified as possible. Keep in mind, Trey is, not from our area, but he works for us for the summer, and he has really gotten his hands on every ward as much as possible. But to answer your question more specifically, I would suggest that, you're right. I mean, some of our commissioners don't necessarily have a downtown business district directly next to them, but you are adjacent to many of them. And as being a first ring, just like we're a first ring to Philadelphia, the best protections for, blight is to make sure the business districts in your area are, taken care of. They might not be in your ward per se, but the effect that economic development has on them and making sure that beautification improves there, you will see, results, and your values of those properties will continue to stay high or go up, I would suggest.
So-
Yeah, let me just add something. This can get a little complicated and confusing in terms of levels of programming. So we looked, you're right, Westchester is a borough, Lansdowne is a borough, both of which have had great success using Main Street programs. Lower Merion Township is the most comparable local jurisdiction to Haverford Township because it's a township, even though it's in a different county. It also is comparable in the sense that it has numerous separate business districts. It's not one downtown. So they have 11 districts, we have 9 districts. The way they deal with that is not through the Main Street program. The Main Street program is targeted to a particular business district. In Lower Merion's case, it's Ardmore. The way they deal with it on a township-wide basis is through the township rather than through a Main Street program. The township has an economic development specialist, full-time. The township has a part-time business recruiter that serves all 11 districts. Now, there's a special intensive attention paid to the Ardmore district through the Main Street program, which is lower down on the scale of hierarchy of authority. It's under the township, under the economic development program of the whole township. It's a specialized program that focuses on one area. So we're talking right now about a person who would serve all districts in Haverford Township, and knowing that they're of different character and different size and have different issues. But an economic development specialist would be able to customize responses to the different districts. At some point, it may be practical to focus intensely on one area or a series of linked areas that could go from the YMCA through Eagle Road, down Oakmont, down Darby to Brookline, and say that's the spine of Haverford Township, that's our Main Street. That's possible down the line, in which case then there would be a second layer of programming, more concentrated, and it would be called the Main Street program. And that gets funded through special grants initially, and ultimately gets funded through what they call a business improvement district, which is a separate layer of taxing just for those businesses that they have to vote on to approve, and that they then govern the use of, so that the businesses, the property owners, through that kind of a district, decide on how those funds are going to be raised. But that's down the line. That's not what we're immediately proposing.
So the township would apply for these grants, and the township would receive the grants
Yes.
and beautify small businesses. That's what we would do, right? Is that correct?
Well,
So I
there's two
understand it?
different routes. The township can get some, as a local government, can get some of the grants. A nonprofit partner is usually the vehicle for other grants. The funds can be used for, depending on the source, the operations of the program, which would be the salary of the person, and/or specific improvements like parking, streetscaping, matching grant programs, low-interest loan programs, technical assistance, things like that. But also, I think we need to point out that when this program really starts working, there's increased revenues through normal channels to the township. Increased parking because there'll be more people patronizing and the meters will be used more consistently. Increased mercantile taxes, certainly, because there'll be more volume of business, and property value taxes as well. And that's an important part of the equation, is the increased revenues to the township when the economy is really thriving and the business and the facilities are fully occupied.
Just one more question. Just one more question. Dawn, if you, what I'm taking from this is that your next step would be that you would like to see an Economic Development Committee. Is that what I'm getting?
Exactly. I think that's where it starts. It starts with you all. And then I think we would ask that that committee look into our recommendation about the feasibility as an investment of investing in a specialized professional to work for the township. And then to guide that work of that professional, develop a multi-year economic development plan focused on the business districts. And so the professional then would be the point person for implementing that plan, and the committee would be supervising the development of the plan and the implementation of the plan, and the HPD would be there as your partner to work with you through that whole process.
Just very briefly, I've suggested having the Economic Development Committee for years. And still think I think that's a necessity and a necessary predicate before we move anywhere, so that we have this board studying and making recommendations to the board before addressing sort of the outward concerns.
Okay. Well, we can bring that up at the next meeting, and I'd be glad to, appoint a committee.
Ask one more question if I can.
Would like to do that.
to any of you. Is it your perception, and I want a candid answer here, that we're really held back without somebody dedicated to this position? I mean, you got 9 ward commissioners here who are concerned about the entire township, but obviously concerned about their own wards as well. You obviously have competition, especially if we're fighting for, if everybody's fighting over the same dollar. You've got a state, representative who represents more than just the township and now less than the whole township because of reapportionment. The state senator deals with 5 townships. So, I mean, is that the idea here? Is some kind of ombudsman who's gonna be able to dedicate themselves to this and kind of not deal with some of the things that maybe hold us back from the kind of cooperative behavior you need to dedicate something to one corridor, or figure out how to make 9 decisions?
Well, yes. I would say ombudsman sounds very general. This is a specialist. This is a professional who knows how to generate, improve business districts and generate greater prosperity and fill vacancies and all that. But it doesn't have to be done in just one way. You could start with a consultant, I suppose, although, we would recommend hiring someone who actually works here. The person could report to Lori or to Larry, depending on how you want to place that person, thereby relieving Lori and Larry of a lot of the work that they're trying to do. I know they got full plates. That person could also relieve you all of some of the work you're doing, because I know you're all trying to improve your districts. There may not be professional staff available to help you do that. So this flexibility, one consideration would be, one idea we thought, because 2015 is coming up shortly, rather than budget for this position for the whole 2015 year, start it in July 1st. So you're budgeting only for a half a year at this time, and that would give us all 9 months to develop the plan, form the committee, develop the plan, and hire an appropriate person.
All right, but I mean, I'm only 9 years on this board, so compared to some folks, I'm a rookie. But if this board had the duty of creating a horse, you'd have a 9-humped camel after about 9 months of fighting. And even if you make a 3-person committee, you're going to end up with a horse with 3 humps. I mean, did Lower Merion do this because they needed the expert to do it, and they needed to take it, to relieve the commissioners of the political battles they would have to do this stuff?
They would have a 14-humped camel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, with 2 abstentions, 12 humps with 2 extensions, actually.
To answer your question, Commissioner Holmes, I would probably, I can't answer that for Lower Merion Township specifically, but I would suggest to you that hiring a specialist, who, by the way, like I said before, is a sought-after position. I mean, these townships, as we've researched, have looked into it, you could find someone who people are fighting over, because they come with a proven track record. And I would suggest that, yes, they would indeed make it easier for commissioners to take this off their plate, and many of the township workers as well to work in tandem with them, because these people would be able to come in, look at the business district, and give an unbiased approach to it, and report back to a board or a committee that you so choose, and maybe work in tandem with a group like ours, a purely volunteer organization, to make sure that all this is being seen through. Yeah, I think totally that I would agree that this township definitely needs this position, in our opinion.
Well, my last comment is, it should have been my first, and that is, about 1,000 years ago, I was a senior in college. Congratulations, Mr. Day, on what was obviously an enjoyable internship, and a very nice, tangible result of that work. So,
Yes,
at least,
excellent.
and I'm sure on others' behalf, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
know
you.
how much time you
We do
dedicated to
appreciate
it.
it, and I think the way we go is we'll put together, Dan suggested we put together a committee and move forward on this.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
Okay?
Good.
Thank you. Great.
Well, they have more, you want more questions?
All right. Police Department update?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Nasty.
Crime report for the month of August. Experienced 12 burglaries. Of those 12, 1 was an attempt, 5 were forced, 6 were by no force. We did arrest 1 female from Upper Darby for 2 of those burglaries. 12 thefts from autos occurred the month of August. 7 vehicles were unlocked. The other 5 were work trucks where the locks were popped out and the work tools stolen. Police officers wrote 456 moving violations last month. They issued 226 written warnings and 240 parking tickets.
Nice job. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Any commissioner committee updates?
All I wanted to update again on the EAC is they're going to be conducting all kinds of rain garden workshops, and they're going to have a booth like they always do at Haverford Township Day. And I think it would be, great if there are residents within the township that would like to, visit that booth and see if they can learn about making, different rain gardens, which I'm not really an expert on. So I think that's the only committee update that I have at this point.
Okay, thank you. So Lori, do you want to talk about St. Andrew's roof?
Which is a problem.
I think we need to have the discussion.
I can.
Okay. I guess,
The
Mr.
agenda is,
Okay,
I just, I thought we were going to talk about 516 South Eagle next. I'm sorry.
I want
We
some.
can do that.
We can,
We can do that.
Cut me off.
No, hold on. It's next on the agenda.
Okay.
17 Landell.
It's the same thing.
Let's do 17 Landilla.
Yes.
17 Landilla,
they're
the
both
owner of the
property.
property is here. It's the former St. Andrew's Church. It's an identified historic resource and would be subject to the provisions of Article 13 in the zoning code. So under 1306, a demolition permit, it has to be authorized by the Board of Commissioners. That authorization follows the review and recommendation of the Township Historical Commission. The Historical Commission, in its review recently, recommended that the property owner not perform the removal of the slate roof that was to be replaced with a standing seam metal roof until a study was done to identify which areas could be done now and which areas maybe could be deferred until later to see whether or not the slate would be more economical to preserve the slate. The property owner pursued demolition of the slate as an emergent measure and received a permit for the emergent removal of the slate and repair of the decking on the roof. So that's where we are. At this point, it would require Board of Commissioners approval to authorize this permit. And the issue becomes, right now, the slate is gone. It's in storage. The property owner, it was a condition of the emergency permit to remove the slate intact that was viable and put it in storage. And so I suppose you're going to have to hear from the property owner at this point.
Property owner's asking us for relief of that.
Authorization of the demolition permit pursuant to 182-1306.
Okay.
Do we have to have a hearing on that, or it's just a straight decision?
It's not a hearing.
it's not a hearing, it's a straight decision
Yeah,
under
a
the.
straight decision by the board.
Who's the property owner?
Is those-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Nope.
sorry, I want to correct myself. The Historical Commission recommended that the board deny the application until such time as the review of the viability of the roof be performed.
Okay. But the way it is now, the roof is off the building and the slate is in storage.
Correct.
Okay, and the gentleman is asking that we allow him to put a standing seam roof.
I believe so. He's here now.
Okay.
Well, I want to be very precise about this. There was a request to demolish the roof that the Historic Commission denied.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Well, let's,
The Historic Commission is advisory, so they made a recommendation that the demolition permit be denied and that the roof be evaluated and to determine whether or not any portion of the slate was in good enough shape to be viable, so that the roof wouldn't change. It would be maintained as a slate roof rather than a standing seam metal
And
roof.
is this owner now before us in the normal course of how our statute works to get the demolition permit?
Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And the Historic Commission has the powers they have under our statute to advise us whether they agree or not agree, or kind of suggest conditions to us on that, right?
Correct.
And Mr. Byrne, is this something that the board should deliberate in executive session? Or is this something that needs to be discussed and decided in public?
You can always deliberate, or on any type of question like this, you can deliberate and ask questions of your solicitor in an executive session. The actual decision itself, I'm wrong. I didn't mean to say deliberate. You can always ask questions and talk about it in an executive session. The deliberations and the decision itself should be done in public.
Is there a time limit within which the board needs to act when an owner has made a demolition request to us?
There isn't anything, I'm looking in H, which is the criteria for deliberation, and it doesn't seem to indicate that the board has, the historical commission had a time constraint imposed on it to review the application within 30 days, which it did almost
Okay.
the next week. So the historical commission
But
acted within the time limit.
That we wouldn't,
Yeah, the roof is off the building, so I would,
yeah.
What is this going to
I would-
be?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. What are they, what's
It's a
going to
home,
be in
it's a
the?
residence.
A home.
It's going to be a residence.
Yes.
It's going to be a home.
Yes. The church, the St. Andrew's Church, which is located right behind the old Lanark School or Stratford Friends,
Is it on Landillo? Mm-hmm. Okay.
it is on,
Yeah, I mean,
it's on Lansdowne, actually.
I'm going to ask the solicitor, I mean, I really think that we need
It's
to
on
talk about
the
this.
corner Lansdowne and Landillo.
Okay. I know the
The
church.
statute provides that
You can do it.
the Board of Commissioners shall consider at a regularly scheduled meeting within 30 days of the issuance of the Historical Commission's written report, the question of the issuance of a permit for demolition. That's my reading under L.
What's the date on theirs?
I'm just looking at the original ordinance. So it's 182, 1306L.
There you go. And then the only limitation would be for disapproval. There's a 45-day, 45 days from this evening for the issuance of a written decision if the board disapproves the permit. And that's under N.
Okay. Commissioner Hall.
Mr. President, Lori,
Yes.
what is on the roof right now? Plywood? What is going on in the roof?
There's the original roof deck. I think very little of it has been replaced. Most of it, removing the slate, was determined to be in acceptable condition. And there's a membrane that's been applied. It's a snow and ice shield.
Oh, okay. Is that structurally, I guess that's okay? I'm just, how long do you go? That's kind of 45 days. It's kind of a long time to go without having a formal roof.
It is. And it would likely require the membrane to be replaced after a certain period of time.
Right.
And I'm sure that the manufacturer's specifications will say 30 days,
Right.
45 days, whatever.
And the Historical Commission, they've looked at, from what I've read that you've sent, they've looked at this metal roof, and they've determined, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read that they determined that it falls within the same period in terms of historical roofing, that it would be acceptable, because it fell within that, but I just want to make sure I read the email right. I think that they looked at it and they said slate and metal were used at that period of the church. Is that what I read?
They did. I think what their recommendation was that the slate would be more in keeping with the construction of the
church.
Of the church itself. But I think that they found that both materials, and Susanna Baruco from the Historical Commission is here, so she might be able to correct me, but I think that they found that both materials were within that same period, you know,
Right.
where materially within that same period.
And do we know the monetary implications of one versus the other?
I think the property owner can probably give you that. I
Mike,
think he might have that
can you come up
information.
and,
Is it, yeah.
It just seems like
He's the owner.
I don't know.
The standing seam metal roof would cost about $100,000, triple that at least, maybe $350,000 for the slate.
Thank you.
I do want to point out that the triple cost was assuming that all of the slate was being removed. I think that was originally the purpose of the Historical Commission's recommendation, that they study it, but I believe at that time, it probably was already pretty far gone on the project. I'm not quite sure where it was.
Is there I'm sorry, Mr. President. Is there a more formal process to
Yeah.
this process than what's happening right now? I mean, is there a submission to the Historic Commission?
There was
Is there a
a
written submission?
There was a
Do we have
written-
that?
It was, the copy, yes, you do. You should
Yeah,
have received a
that's what I
copy of the
read.
permit application. But I will say that typically, there is an impact report that is done on the historic resource. And typically, there's an appraisal done. But for this particular application, where you're replacing the roof and not demoing the structure in its entirety, I'm not sure how that would play into the appraisal, because some of it has to do with the reuse of the structure to show that it's not economically viable to maintain the structure. So some of